working there. Okay, we're at least live on that one. Okay. That one's not working. And that one is. And now, where are we? Everything looks like it was working, but I don't know if it's going to be working now, so fingers crossed this is actually going to end up working. Go live over here. So we got that one there. So we're definitely live on that one. Don't know what's going to happen with that one, so we'll see what happens. Okay, all I've got to do now is hit live on TikTok and we are good to roll. Oops. There we go. Go live. Go live. Hello everybody. Hopefully the live is now working across multiple platforms like we normally do here on a Friday night. Just while we're waiting for all the notifications to go out to everybody, my name is Amanda Sutherland and I am an entrepreneur who specialises in helping other female entrepreneurs who especially get really struggle with technology and colours and branding and all of that stuff that you want to do in the background that we don't necessarily think about. All the stuff that we hate doing. That's the stuff that I actually enjoy doing. So helping people understand their back-end systems and getting their back-end systems working. So I really, really do enjoy doing all of that. And that's part of what I want to help with. Hopefully all of my lives are working tonight. Fingers crossed. If you can see me, say hi. Hopefully we're working on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube as usual. I can see TikTok is working. Wonderful. Welcome TikTok. So tonight what I'm going to be talking about is mindset challenges as an entrepreneur, because we all face them. It's absolutely normal. I mean, who doesn't get them? Who is not I don't know anybody who doesn't at some point face a mindset challenge when it comes to work or to running a business or creating their own business. So I would like tonight to help maybe put some light on some of the situations and how we can maybe work our way through it. So let's get this sort of started tonight. So as we're getting started, drop your name in the comments and say hi. Let us know where you're watching from. And if you haven't already, like, follow, subscribe, depending on which platform you're on. You know what to do. And we'll get into this. So one of the biggest things I find that people have but don't necessarily know they have, it's probably the right way to put it. It's probably more of an underlying fear, and that is technology. People tend to be scared about technology. How to use it, and whether or not it can be feeling the fear that it's going to be incredibly overwhelming and overpowering and hard to do. So it's really hard to describe, but it's something that people don't necessarily realize that they're suffering from. So it's one of those things. It's looking at this new technology and trying to get your head around it, trying to understand how it can actually integrate into your business, how it can actually make your business better. That sort of thing. It's really, really hard sometimes to contemplate, or also another word, not so much contemplate, but try to incorporate it. And it doesn't matter whether it's learning a new platform. Like at the moment, I'm learning how to use InVideo for a lot of my videos. So that's a brand new platform for me because it doesn't work the same way as some other stuff I've used. So you've got to learn the language of each program. And that can be very, very overwhelming for a lot of people. Things like managing your social media, that can be incredibly overwhelming. I often find that trying to create and keep up with the sheer amount of volume that we as people these days consume. That in and of itself can be overwhelming. I know before I started using some AI tools to help me in that department, it just wasn't happening. It just was not happening. So there are plenty of tools out there to help you, and it's just and sometimes even too, it's about looking at the analytics that each of your social medias provide you. That things like that, even that can be quite anxiety inducing for a lot of people. But I really want to ensure everybody who is watching or watching on the replay that all of these feelings, they are absolutely normal. And believe me, you are not alone. You are so not alone, it's not funny. Everyone experiences this on some level. And the way we all experience that, it depends on who we are and the type of person we are. But let's have a quick look at some tips that can actually help us ease the anxiety around some of these technological things. So it can be as simple as maybe breaking down the tools you are going to use or the instructions for those tools into manageable steps. So technology can actually seem very, very intimidating when viewed as this whole massive blob of stuff that's there in front of you. It's the old adage of you can't see the forest for the trees can very much come into play here when you're talking about technology. So by taking the instructions apart and breaking them down into smaller steps, or taking what you need to achieve and going, what are the steps I need to get there, and breaking it down into smaller, more manageable steps, it actually makes the task of understanding technology or the new technology you want to introduce a lot easier. And one of the best ways you can do that, for example, is to start by focusing on one platform at a time. Don't try and learn everything all at once, because you will create overwhelm. Pick one item that is important to you, or one system that is important to you, and learn that one. Get up to date on that one. Get comfortable with that one so that you know that you're working with that one. And then move on to the next one that's going to help you. So, for example, if you want to learn a new email marketing tool, you might begin by setting up an account. Then you might move on to creating a template, and then you might explore the analytic features. So you're not actually doing everything at the same time at once. And by separating the tasks into single tasks like that, what you can do then is you actually make it easier for you to learn. It makes it easier for you to comprehend what you're doing, because if you try, it's probably the best analogy I can give you here is trying to fly a plane when you don't even know how to start the plane. So we tend to take that approach with technology. We just dive in, punch a few buttons and go, nope, had enough, it doesn't work. Sometimes we just need to take a breath, step back, and look at the steps that are required to actually get you to that point where you can actually work the software, work the technology, and make it work for you. So another thing you can do to actually build your confidence where technology is concerned is there are plenty of resources out there. You can ask for tutorials. You can look for guided help. I can provide you guided help in a number of areas. I may not know your software particularly, but I actually have a fairly good enough brain that I can, well, not so much brain, but I've got enough experience that I can actually possibly ask the right questions that help unlock what you're trying to do. But there are so many resources available to you to help you navigate these new technologies. Online tutorials. YouTube is a gold mine. If you're not sure how to use a piece of technology or a piece of software, ask YouTube. There are literally millions and millions of how-to tutorials there to help you work your way through things. There are webinars. There are plenty of webinars around that can actually help you work things out. User forums. They actually can provide really good, valuable guidance. So they are great little places where communities get together and ask questions and help each other out to solve issues. So just don't hesitate to use these resources. They're designed to make learning easier and more effective. So another thing to consider when you're actually trying to learn all this stuff and overcome the overwhelm of technology is actually to look at time management techniques. And that involves many different techniques. There are many options out there for you. So if you're watching, why don't you pop in the comments below something that you actually try that works for you. And let's help each other out a little bit by sharing what works for us. So one tip that I love and that really works for me is the Pomodoro technique. This is actually one of the most effective time management techniques. It basically involves in working in focused intervals of say 25 minutes followed by a 5-minute break. Then you complete 4 intervals and you take a longer break, say 15-30 minutes. And this technique actually helps maintain high levels of productivity at the same time preventing burnout. So that's really cool to me, if you ask me. And it's as simple, to get started, it's as simple as, say, setting a timer for 25 minutes and picking one task. Pick one task to work on in that 25 minutes. When the timer goes off, take a short break and recharge. And you actually find that if you're focusing on one task at a time, you actually complete your list of tasks. This applies all over the place. It's not just for helping you to overcome a new piece of technology. This applies across all of business. Completing one task at a time actually ends up being more efficient than trying to complete 10-15 tasks at a time, because when you focus solely on one task, you actually finish it. Whereas if you're bouncing it from one to all over the place, you don't really focus long enough to finish a task. So it really is helpful to do this. And this is one of the reasons why this is actually one of my favorite techniques for helping me stay on track when I'm in that mindset of I can't focus. So another great technique to use is time blocking. And this is where you allow specific blocks of time to do a different task or a learning activity. So for example, you might say spend 30 minutes every morning learning a new technology or learning how to manage your social media accounts. And by scheduling these blocks in, you're actually making sure you allow yourself time for important tasks without distractions. And there are plenty of ways to do this. It can be as simple as getting into your calendar and highlighting in your calendar, this amount of time is what I'm doing. I'm going to do X for that time. Or it could be as complicated or complex as you need it, depending on what you're doing. There are just so many different options around to help you manage your time. One of the other tools I love is, I used to use Asana a lot because you can actually set time frames in that. I'm actually these days probably more inclined to look at something like Airtable, where I break a task up into chunks, and then I create a list of checkboxes, so that as I complete a task, I'm going check, 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 check. So that helps keep me on track as well. So there are so many different techniques that you've got around that you can actually help to create progress, help you overcome things like learning a new technology, because you've got to allow time for that stuff. So another technique we can look at is called the Eisenhower Matrix. Now this one I don't do as much, but it is actually still quite a useful technique, especially when you've got so many things to do. You start by making a list of everything that has to be done. And then what you do is you basically get a sheet of paper, you draw 4 lines, 2 lines, one straight down, one across, and creating four quadrants around the page. And in quadrant 1, you go back to your list and you go back to your list of things that you've just dumped onto your piece of paper, and then you grab anything that's really urgent and important and pop it into quadrant 1. Then you go through your list again and see what's left. Anything that's important but not urgent to be done, you put into quadrant 2. And then you go back to what's left on your list. Anything that's urgent but not important, it goes into quadrant 3. And then anything that's not urgent and not important, which is basically what, by this point, what should be left on your list, you put that into quadrant 4. So what you then do is you focus on tasks in quadrant 1 and quadrant 2. And if you needs be, you try and delegate or minimize the tasks in quadrants 3 and 4. So this approach really helps you concentrate on what truly matters and really allows you to manage your time more effectively. So you're actually working on the important stuff, not just hoping you're doing something. So another thing that actually happens to all of us as entrepreneurs and people is from time to time, we all have the fear of failing, the fear of failure. Now, the trick for dealing with this fear, which is way too real for a lot of people, is to actually take time to step back and look at let me try that again, and reframe that failure as a learning opportunity. So failure is actually a very powerful tool if you choose to view it as such. So instead of seeing the failure as a negative outcome and nothing else, consider that it could be an opportunity to gain valuable insights. After a setback, if you take time and you actually reflect on what went wrong, what you learned, and how you can apply that lesson in the future, this shift in perspective actually, it's really powerful. What it does, the shift in that perspective, it goes from, oh, I failed, ho-ha, me, bad me, never, can't do this. What it does when you make that, change that shift in your mind, if you change it from what it doesn't work, if you look at it and go, okay, why didn't it work? What can I do differently? And see what lessons you can learn, and then apply those lessons next time you want to do something. You'll be surprised at how quickly these failures can help you move towards your goal. They are far and away the best opportunities for learning, because you can go, well, that didn't work, what can work now? There's a fantastic quote in, I think it's one of the National Treasure movies with Nicolas Cage, where he's quoting, I think, the guy, Thomas Edison. I think it was Thomas Edison. He says something along the lines of that someone asked Edison, why did you keep going? You failed 1,000 times. And apparently Edison's response was something along the lines of, well, I only need one way to work. I've found 1,000 ways it doesn't work, but I only need one to work. So what that quote, hearing that, what that did for me was like, you know what? I've found a way it doesn't work. Let's tweak it and try something different and see if that works. And eventually, if you keep taking that time to review and reflect on what went wrong, eventually you figure out what works. You really do. But you've got to be open to it. And this is one of the best ways I've ever come across to help you get over that fear of failure. Instead of fearing it, you start to embrace it. You start to look at it and go, how can I learn? What can I do differently next time? It actually becomes exciting when something doesn't work. I know that's a little bit extreme and it sounds extreme, but it is actually, I don't know how to explain it better than that. It really is something that does become so important to you to do. It really is. So another thing that you can actually do to help you get through that whole fear of failure and managing your time, all of that is all wrapped up into one little thing. One of the things you can really do to help you with that is set realistic goals and expectations. So setting achievable goals is actually crucial. It actually helps you manage that fear of failure. So by breaking a larger goal into smaller and manageable tasks, using, for example, the SMART system, that is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, to define your clear objectives, that can actually really help you see what needs to be done, what order it needs to be done, and it really helps you focus on, like some of the other techniques we've spoken about tonight, really helps you focus on some of the important things. Really helps. Now, the important thing here with the SMART technique is actually part of the reason I do these lives every Friday night. It is to encourage us to take time and look back on the week and remember, hang on, we're still here, and we've actually done something, and something has actually worked this week. So we need to celebrate each small success along the way. Now, there's a couple of reasons we need to do this. One, it really helps us to build confidence about the situation. It helps us to maintain motivation. And when we build the confidence and maintain our motivation, that fear of failure that we were talking about, it starts to dissipate. It starts to become under control, ready for the next time. But it's because it's not going to go permanently. It is actually going to be something that comes and goes depending on the situation, because we are human after all. We've got to remember that we are human, and we've got to be kind to ourselves. So another way to actually help overcome fear of failure, fear of learning new technologies, all of that stuff, is creating a positive visualization technique. And what this involves is actually imagining the success at the end of all the projects, of all the tasks. So what you can do each morning, for example, is spend, say, 5 minutes thinking to yourself and creating in your mind's eye an idea of what a successful outcome is. What's going to be success for the day? What's going to be success for the long term? And start to allow yourself to feel those positive feelings associated with it. So what this does is actually helps to reinforce your confidence, and it actually reduces any anxiety that you develop around potential failures. So this is actually pretty cool technique. And this is something I am still learning to do myself. It's not something that comes naturally to most of us. Taking that time to remember, you know what? I can do this. And this is how I'm going to feel when I get there. It's such a powerful feeling. It really is such a powerful feeling. But yeah, it really is. So, and that leads us into something else as well. All of this fear, all of this technology stuff, it actually leads us into something that nearly every single person I've ever spoken to, including people who are quite famous that I've been lucky enough to meet, have all experienced at one point or another, and that is imposter syndrome. So if you don't know what imposter syndrome is, it's basically it's a trick that your mind plays where you start to doubt your accomplishments, your skills, your talents, and you have that constant fear of feeling that you are a fraud or being exposed of a fraud. And this is despite the fact that there is evidence that you are confident, there is just so much. Yeah, it's one of those. It's just one of those things that you, despite all the evidence of you being there and having the confidence and the knowledge, you have this irrational fear that you are a fraud. And it is actually quite a common thing, and it's because we set high standards for ourselves. We set incredibly high standards for ourselves, and it comes from that. It stems from having such high standards and then falling short of our high standards. And because we don't meet our own standards, that triggers the feelings of inadequacy and being an imposter. This is something that we all experience. It's an unrealistic pressure to put on ourselves, and it makes it very difficult for us to actually recognize and appreciate the achievements that we have made. So what are some techniques that we can use to help overcome imposter syndrome? So as we know, we're in the age of social media, And it's actually very, very easy to compare ourselves to others who seem to be achieving more, or appearing more successful. And these comparisons, they're probably one of the worst things we can do to ourselves. They will actually amplify any feelings you have or we have of self-doubt and inadequacy, as we often compare our behind the scenes with somebody else's highlight reels. So just remember, even for yourself, you don't necessarily want to tell everybody everything that's gone wrong. So what you might do is you put out the best version of yourself. Every single person that I know does it. So you can't, you've just got to rely on the fact that comparison, it's going to cause problems for you, because you really don't know what's happening behind the scenes of somebody else's business or their lives. What appears to be on the front may not be what's behind the scenes. So you really, it's a hard habit to break, but once you break it, you actually free yourself up. You free up so much mental space for yourself, and you lift a weight off your shoulders that I cannot even begin to describe. Sorry, I got an itchy nose tonight. Another cause of imposter syndrome can be stepping into a new role and facing a new challenge. That can be something as simple as, someone's asked you to do something that you wouldn't normally do, and stepping into that new space can be enough to trigger imposter syndrome. So, because when we venture into unfamiliar territory, it's actually natural to question our abilities and to worry about being exposed as unqualified. But you know what? When you learn to embrace that and start to become comfortable with what was uncomfortable, you will actually discover you've done some growth. And by starting to embrace that, I've found over the years, like 15 years ago, there is no way I would be sitting here doing this. But by taking the time to actually step into that area that is really uncomfortable, I've gotten over that. I do this every week now. I have no issues anymore jumping on camera and having a chat. So another thing that causes imposter syndrome is it's a lack of recognition or positive feedback from others who reinforce. And this lack of recognition and feedback, what it does, it actually reinforces our internal feelings of being an imposter. And without that external validation, it's very easy to doubt our own contributions and successes. So what we need to do is find ways to not rely on that external validation. It takes time, and it is well worth putting in the time to get to that point where you know that you can do this, irrespective of what anyone else says. So another thing that actually contributes to imposter syndrome is cultural and society. Societal norms and cultural expectations really do contribute to imposter syndrome. It includes things like messages that promote self-doubt or stress, that they actually help create that constant self-proving or the needing to prove yourself. And putting ourselves and allowing ourselves into those situations, it really can exacerbate these feelings. And one of the last causes of imposter syndrome is our personal background and upbringing. Our upbringing and past experiences can actually change our self-perceptions. If we were raised with high expectations or criticism, it really can have the opportunity to impact our feelings of self-worth, and that really contributes to the development of imposter syndrome. And I don't know about how many of you out there, but as someone who does live with mental health issues based from childhood trauma, I've had imposter syndrome. It gets me from time to time, and you can't help it. It's just part of who you are. So just acknowledge it when it happens. It's normal. It's normal to have those feelings. So now that we've just looked at different ways that can trigger imposter syndrome, let's look at some ways of moving through it and helping us become more positive. So it can be as simple as focusing on past successes and strengths. So reflecting on your past achievements and strengths can actually help reinforce the self-belief. So that's actually things like what we do here on a Friday night, taking that couple of minutes to say, for example, celebrate a win. What wins did you have this week? What went well? So take a moment to celebrate those for yourself. Even if you've just got to write it down on a piece of paper and pop it into a jar every day, one thing. You get to the end of the week, you've got a list of things to celebrate. And that leads into the success journal idea, where you actually document what's gone well for you and provide your own positive feedback, provide your own moments of pride. And that removes then the need that we were talking about for external validation. So, and just keep something like this beside you, because then what happens is when you get into a situation when the self-doubt creeps in, and it will creep in eventually, when it does creep in, you can actually have a physical reminder that you can do things and that you have accomplished things. And by having that available to you, it reminds you that you are capable, and it helps you to build your confidence. So that's a great technique for helping you overcome things like imposter syndrome. And another one is the good old favorite that we keep coming back to is SMART goals. You set small, achievable goals, breaking down larger goals into smaller, manageable tasks. So when we use that SMART criteria, it allows us to set clear objectives, achievable objectives, and then at the end of that, we celebrate it. Because remember, progress is a series of small wins. We didn't learn to walk by just standing up and walking. We have to have a few falls along the way to learn how to do it. So remember, it's okay. It's absolutely okay if something doesn't go to plan. It's an opportunity to grow. And another way we can this is actually a really crucial thing for helping us get through imposter syndrome, is having a supportive network around you. So building a network of supportive individuals, it actually can significantly boost your confidence. So, and this can be as simple as finding professional groups, mentorship programs, or communities of like-minded solopreneurs who can offer encouragement, constructive feedback, and validation if required. A supportive community provides reassurance that helps combat the feelings of imposter syndrome. And when you're working for yourself as a solopreneur, there's nothing quite like having that battle buddy that you could talk to who understands the concept of what you're going through. There's just nothing like it. So I just want to leave you with this encouragement. Remember, you are capable and deserving of success. I'm going to say that again. You are capable and deserving of success. Imposter syndrome is very common, but it does not define your abilities or potential. So I'm going to say that all again, because it's really important to hear this. You are capable and deserving of success. Imposter syndrome is a common experience, but it does not define your abilities or potential. So embrace your strengths, acknowledge your achievements, and surround yourself with positivity. Do that for yourself, and it's amazing what you can achieve. So something else I want to touch on tonight is perfectionism. This is another thing that actually tricks up our mindsets when we're trying to work by ourselves. Perfectionism involves striving for excessively high standards and being overly critical of our own performance. It often includes an obsession with avoiding mistakes, achieving a flawless result. The pursuit of perfection can lead to significant stress, procrastination, and burnout. So perfectionism really is not something we want. Now, there are some ways to overcome perfectionism. It's a process that's well worth going through. So emphasizing your progress over the perfection. So it's about achieving a shift of focus from achieving that perfection to making an incremental progress. Set realistic milestones. Celebrate each achievement. Doesn't matter how small it is. What this does is it actually helps reduce the pressure to be perfect. And it does actually encourage a more positive and manageable perspective. Adopting the good enough principle, embrace the idea that good enough is often sufficient. It does amazing for your mindset and helping you get through your overwhelm where technology is concerned. It's amazing for helping you get out of imposter syndrome moments. It's really, really essential to becoming more productive as well. And the trick here is to define for you, for yourself, what is good enough? What does good enough look like for each task or project? And focus on completing your tasks within those parameters. What this principle of good enough does, it actually helps to mitigate the tendency to obsess over the minute details. Because when we obsess over the minute details, we get stuck and we can't move forward. But if we start to adopt the good enough principle, we can actually start to move forward, complete tasks, and actually become more efficient. And once again, another tip for getting over perfectionism is breaking tasks into smaller and manageable chunks. Large tasks are often overwhelming, and when we feel overwhelmed, we lead ourselves into procrastination and perfectionism. So by breaking them down into smaller, more manageable components and creating a plan or a checklist for each project, and by tackling one small task at a time, we help ourselves to reduce our feelings of overwhelm and making it easier for ourselves to make steady progress. In addition to all of this, we should actually probably consider implementing regular check-ins with our mentors just to assess how we're going and adjust our goals. And what this can do is actually helps us or help you stay on track, and it helps you to maintain a healthy perspective on your work. Because this is all about being healthy and creating a healthy mindset towards being an entrepreneur. Yeah, there's so many different things that we can do to help ourselves. And I think the last sort of topic I want to touch on in some detail tonight is probably time management tips. There are so many different tips. We've already covered a few of them. There's just so many different things we can do. Things like prioritizing tasks and creating a simple schedule. So by organising our tasks by importance and deadlines, using daily and weekly planners to list our tasks, starting with high priority, we actually allow ourselves to see what we need to do, see what matters, and focus on those first. Time blocking techniques that we spoke about earlier. That just works so well because you actually give yourself the gift of focusing on one task at a time. Because when we don't allow ourselves to focus on one task, if we're trying to focus on everything all at once, what we do is we create an opportunity for overwhelm to creep in, an opportunity for perfectionism to creep in, an opportunity for imposter syndrome to creep in. By allowing ourselves the gift of time to do one task, we can actually then feel like we've succeeded at something, which just takes away all of that. Another technique we can do is the 2-minute rule, and it involves addressing tasks that can be completed in 2 minutes immediately. And this technique helps us to prevent small tasks piling up and becoming overwhelming. So by what we do here is you have a look and go, okay, we might assign a block of time to do the 2-minute tasks. So that's basically, we give ourselves, say, half an hour, and we're going to do all the quick, simple tasks that can just be done and take them off our list. And what you do when you do that is, it's a very fast way to free up mental space and give yourself time for so much more. It really is a great way. So I've got so much that I could talk about, but I've been going for a little while now, so I probably just want to remind you guys now to actually say thank you. Thank you for joining me and listening to me ramble on for just over half an hour about things and tips that can actually help our mindset in business and help us become more productive and help us stop being overwhelmed. So I'm just going to probably just do a quick recap here. And if you're watching on the replay or live, it doesn't matter where you're watching, make sure you've either liked, subscribed or followed for more tips like this. And just, and then comment and also your tips and tricks so that we create a community of helping each other. And that's ultimately my biggest thing, is for help, creating that community of help. So some of the topics we've covered today are things like overcoming the fear of technology by breaking it into manageable steps, using time management techniques like the Pomodoro technique, time blocking, task prioritization. That's a word I struggle with. And you know what? It doesn't matter that I struggle with it. It just doesn't matter. Addressing the fear of failure through reframing and setting realistic goals and visualizing success. So we can also address, another topic we covered was addressing imposter syndrome by understanding its common causes and developing confidence through focusing on past successes, setting small achievable goals and surrounding ourselves with a supportive community. And part of that is you guys. Is you guys. Please comment and help create that supportive community and share your tips about what you're taking away from this live today. We can combat perfectionism by emphasizing progress over perfection and adopting the good enough principle. And one of the last things we spoke about was managing time effectively. When we do that, it helps us to overcome fear of failure with techniques such as task prioritization, time blocking, the 2-minute rule, and reframing failure and setting realistic goals and visualizing success. There is just so much we can do when we're trapped in those negative mindsets. It really is. So feel free to pop any questions in the comments. I'll come back and answer them as best I can. Don't forget to celebrate your wins, because that is why we get together on a Friday night. It's really important to our progress, to helping us overcome some of these things we've been talking about tonight. So just in closing, thank you for joining me today. I really hope there's been something helpful here for you, something valuable that you can apply in your business. If you do want to connect further, please either make sure you like, subscribe or follow whichever platform you're on, because for those of you who have just joined, I go live on about 4 or 5 platforms at once, so just follow that and reach out to me. Or even just visit my website at amandasutherland.com.au. You can follow me on social media, and I do have some upcoming events and resources that might actually be helpful. Stay tuned so I can let you know more about them as they start to develop. In the meantime, have a fantastic day or night, wherever it is in the part of the world you're joining me from. And remember, you have got this. You've got this. Thank you for joining me.